Hi, I'm Jay Farner, CEO of Quicken Loans. 30% of Americans who are planning home improvements of $5,000 or more will pay for those renovations with a high-interest credit card. That may not be a great idea. A better idea may be to take cash out of your home with a Quicken Loans 30-year fixed-rate mortgage. The rate today on our 30-year fixed-rate mortgage is 4.375%. APR 4.65%. Call us today at 800-QUICKEN or go to rocketmortgage.com.
Rate subject to change. Pay 2.13% fee to receive this discounted rate. Call for cost information and conditions. Equal housing lender. License in all 50 states. NMLS number 3030.
TV party tonight! TV party tonight! TV party tonight! TV party tonight! We're gonna have a TV party tonight! Alright! We're gonna have a TV party, alright! Tonight! We've got nothing better to do than watch TV and have a couple of brews. Everybody's gonna hang out here tonight! Alright! We'll pass out on the couch! Alright! Tonight! We got nothing better to do than watch TV and have a couple of brews. Don't talk about anything else. We don't wanna know. We're dedicated to our favorite shows.
And tonight, our favorite show, and yours, I know it is, because you all won't stop talking about it, you sons of bitches. Game of Thrones, brought to you by the good people at George R.R. Martin. He's a person, not a people. At HBO. And Generator Entertainment. And Warner Brothers Television Distribution. I am here tonight with Alexis Haina of Honeysuckle Rose Creations. How you doing, Alexis?
I'm doing very well.
Outstanding. And back on the show again from our Canadian office, it's David Wright, ladies and gentlemen. How you doing, David?
I am fine, thanks. Wishing that people would stop posting spoilers in YouTube video titles.
The internet.
Low.
The internet. It stinks. All right.
Special place in hell, people. Special place in hell.
So this particular podcast actually comes as a special request. A couple of years ago, one of our fans of the network, yes, we do have them. It isn't just people who post nasty comments about me on YouTube. We actually have a few people that like us. One of them
who aren't on the show,
who don't actively podcast with me, believe it or not. One of them reached out to me a couple of times. He's had some suggestions. He's had some requests. One in particular was, he was like, when are you going to talk about Game of Thrones? I must know. When will you give us your opinion on Game of Thrones? He actually thought me and Sean were going to talk about this, but as it turns out, I don't think Sean watches the show. But I have enlisted the good people over here, Alexis and David, to help me out with this, and so we're here. We're finally here. I saved this show to talk, like I did with Weeds, to talk about the entire series at large. It is a hefty series. There's a lot of detail here and a lot of stuff to sort of sort through just in this last 6 episodes of the damn thing. But we're going to try to whittle it down to an hour and just kind of give an overview of what we liked, didn't like. I do want to spend some time talking about the conclusion, just because it's generated, as we say in the wrestling industry, a lot of heat. But for the most part, this isn't going to be an episode-by-episode detail breakdown. This is, like I've done in the past, just sort of general feelings, things that stuck out, things you have a burning desire to talk about. So, I will tell you that I didn't even get into Game of Thrones until 2017. I've joked about this before, but in all reality, I spent the summer of 2017 binge-watching the entire series after numerous people who were not fans of fantasy were telling me how good it was. And I said, well, if it's not The Wire, I'm not interested. But I made that mistake in the past with Breaking Bad, so I said, okay, I should stop telling people that. I should stop saying to people, if it's not like The Wire, I won't watch. One particular person at work was hounding me to watch it, so I finally said, okay, I'll give this a shot. And so I binged it all the way up to its current season, which was season 7. And I watched that one live. And as it turns out, yeah, this was a pretty addicting show. What's your history with this thing, Alexis?
I actually didn't start watching it until about 2013. My husband, who I was just living with at the time, we weren't married yet, we had heard a lot about it, but we hadn't had a chance really to get into it yet. And I remember it was a weird situation. We had fled from the apartment we were living in. We were renting out a basement apartment at a house, which we found out had radon poisoning. So we were like, screw you guys, we're out of here. And at the time, we weren't making a lot of money, so we were sharing a one-bedroom apartment with someone else because that was literally all we could afford. So we were stuck in our bedroom most of the time, and yeah, we just set up the TV in the corner, and we're like, well, we don't really have much else we can do here, so we decided to start watching Game of Thrones. We got caught up on it, and I do believe we got through 2.5 seasons in about a week.
Wow. Okay. How about you, David?
Similar to you, Mark, except I was more after season 1. Like I had heard that there was this thing called Game of Thrones, but that was about it. Until some friends started talking about it, and then one friend was finally like, "Look, you need to watch this show." So we put on an episode, and I think about after 2 or 3 episodes, I was just hooked in. Blitzed through the rest of season 1, then got into the novels, read through all of those, and then kept on keeping up with the show.
So let me tell you my first impressions of the show, beginning with season 1. It actually took a long time to hook me. It took almost the entire season because if I had just watched if I had watched it live and I'd seen the first episode, I don't know if I would have gone back for a second. I kind of found it boring. And season 1, I just in general, it does pick up towards the end, but boy, does it take a while getting there. And I found myself, I don't know, I was kind of split. I found myself not necessarily being tremendously interested in the Ned Stark character. As things went on and it started to pick up towards the end, I was like, I started to get more into it. And then, of course, they kill him. Spoilers. They killed him.
I was just about to say, if you didn't like Ned Stark, that's not a problem for very long.
Yeah.
It's Sean Bean. Half of his work has got a contract line in there saying, "I'm going to die in this." I think the only person who's died in film and TV more than Sean Bean is Michael Biehn.
You know what's funny about that is I saw this. I was like, he's the lead in this. He's the hero. Like he dies in everything, and he dies in this too. So that all worked out. But it was only maybe I think it's like 10 episodes for the first season, and it was only maybe the last 2 or 3 where I was like, oh, okay, this is starting to pick up now. And in his particular storyline started to become somewhat interesting to me, to the point that when he did die, I was kind of sad, and I was like, oh you bastard Lannisters, you. So I'll kick it over to you, Alexis. What did you struggle with the first season like I did, or were you kind of hooked from the start?
I was just mostly hooked with the different ways they were telling the story and how they were really just, what's the word I'm looking for? Nothing seemed to be off limits in this TV series. There was so much sex and nudity and so many things that we consider taboo, and I kept looking and going, wow, they don't care what they put on the air, do they? I mean, season 1...
I'm guessing you never watched Oz.
I think we've discussed that in previous podcasts.
Okay, go on.
But season 1 actually gave a definition to the term sexposition, where exposition is being given during a sex scene.
Right. I've always said if you're going to do an exposition dump, you have to make it visually interesting. That's one way to do it.
Yeah, it's telling your backstory while you're instructing 2 prostitutes to go down on one another. Uh-huh.
What about you, David? What did you think of the first season?
I'll admit it takes a few episodes to get into it, though, like with a lot of things like fantasy, you sort of have to flesh out the world at the start and get establish the characters before you can really kind of start doing interesting things with them. Much like our mutual friend Andrew, like I started off in university doing a bit of history, so it was kind of neat to see like a fantasy world done, but presented more as like it's the Dark Ages, but there's also magic.
Yeah.
And like you look at the Dothraki, okay, so they're basically Mongols, but not. And then when you sort of add in that the whole Machiavellian values of the show, where it's the noble just hero doesn't win because they always the bad guys are always willing to do the dirty tricks. You can sort of sum it up when Bronn has his duel with the Knight of the Vale, and the knight has got all this pomp and circumstance and fancy shiny armor, and Bronn's just there with his sword. He just trips him up over his cape and stabs him through the back of the neck and throws him out the window. And then they say, "You, sir, fight with no honor." It's like, yeah, he did. Or you have Khal Drogo, like basically dying because his wife nagged at him to do something. Or it's very much like Alexander the Great. You have this amazing conqueror, military genius. He drinks himself to death. So it's just that kind of anything can happen. We're not playing with the usual rules of morality or how these stories usually work. That kind of got me more into the show.
Exactly.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just saying that's exactly what someone said. All the cliches you thought you knew, they avoided, and I thought it was brilliant. But I will say that they really did kill off more good guys than bad guys. But for the most part, when they started killing off bad guys, it was so satisfying.
When you finally get to those last two seasons where they finally get some justice, it's like, oh, thank God, finally.
Even in season 1, the death of Varys, Daenerys' older brother, the Golden Crown.
Visera.
What is it?
Visera. And Varys is the spider.
Right, Viserys. Sorry, there was an extra letter in there. Yeah, no, that golden crown that he pours on his head. Admitted, that is one of the most satisfying deaths in TV. You could watch that over and over again, and it's awesome.
But again, like he gets it by being an idiot. He breaks the rules. He walked into the Cowl's tent, fully armed, and basically starts being a selfish brat against this mountain of a man, Khal Drogo, who's like destroyed civilizations, and it's like, dude, you do not know how much of a bad situation you're in right now. And then he does.
What I really liked about Game of Thrones was that, yes, the Lannisters were not great people, but even within the Lannisters, there's an ebb and flow of good and evil, where even within the same character, it takes place. For example, you have Jaime Lannister, who pushes a kid out a window because he got caught fucking his sister. Clearly, this is a bad guy thing. But but he's drawn to be a sympathetic character over the course of a few seasons. I mean, the man suffers great loss, not the least of which was his fucking sword fighting hand.
Well, that's it, right? Like, he, as he says, I was that hand, and like all the situations that he's had in his life has been either, hey, my daddy's Tywin Lannister, don't mess with me, or okay, let's fight, I'll kill you. And now all of a sudden, he doesn't have that anymore. It's like, oh crap, I guess I'm gonna have to learn how to think my way out of this.
And then you have, Cersei, who's, for most of the series is a terrible human being. But then there's a season where she has to do a walk of shame, and it's drawn sympathetically. That's not necessarily a scene where I think as a viewer, the expected reaction. I mean, some people may have reacted this way. I can't speak for everybody. I know for myself, I was like, despite all of the sinister things that Cersei has done, I felt like that season drew her sympathetically enough to when she does the walk of shame, you feel bad for her. That's just what I mean. Like, there's an ebb and flow of good and evil even within the same character, to where previous seasons she was a shit, she'll be a shit afterwards, but for at least this one moment in time, she's a sympathetic character.
Well, only in that religious fundamentalists are really, really, really annoying.
They tend to be hard to argue with. Do you have a thought in mind about that, Alexis? About characters that are sort of No, I mean, here's another good one, Daenerys, which this is going to get us talking about the finale here, but Daenerys, for all the people who name their kid Khaleesi, let me explain something about this character. Yes, on the one hand, she would free slaves, but she murdered a lot of people along the way. And let us remember, her main goal as she's freeing these people was to gather up was to do so to gather up an army large enough to retake the throne that her crazy father sat on.
One of my favorite character growths is Theon Greyjoy.
Yes.
I really did like his storyline. I mean, this comes from, first, he's just a little incidental character who's living with the Starks. We know very little about him. We know that he's he's friends with Robb.
Yes, another one talk about loss.
Yeah, no kidding. And with this is a character that you go from enjoying to despising to fearing to feeling sorry for to despising again to admiring. It's just one of the craziest arcs, but it's done so well. And that has to be said that the actors in this show are some of the best, I think, that any show has ever gone. You guys are talking about the Walk of Shame with Cersei. And yes, it is meant to evoke sympathy, but, oh my God, what's the name of the actress who plays Cersei?
Lita Headey.
Lita Headley.
Lita Headley. She plays Cersei with so much despicableness that even when people are chucking the fruit at her and she's walking naked and you see her crying and falling over herself, you still hate her.
Yep. She loves her kids, though. That's like the one good thing about her. And her cheekbones.
Certainly not every character... I said a lot about Daenerys. Did anyone want to follow up on that, or can we move on?
I kind of found it very odd when we got to the last season, not this season, but the previous one, where she finally gets to Westeros, and she goes from the freer of slaves, the breaker of chains, to right. That's my throne. It is mine. You will bend the knee, or I'll kill you with my dragons. It's like, wait a minute, so basically, you want people to do what you say, or you'll kill them. That's kind of like slaves. Well, and I'm just kind of like waiting for Tyrion or Jon to kind of say wait a second, what's with this whole end of slavery thing? And now you come over here demanding unearned loyalty.
Yeah, that's why when she does what she does in the second to last episode, and everyone was like, "But for why?" And I was like, "Don't." My favorite is the argument that the conclusions to Game of Thrones are utterly unearned, to which they're only unearned if you forgot what happened in the previous seasons. If you were absolutely not paying any attention to what was going on with Bran, or you myopically only focused on this freeing of slaves from Daenerys, then sure. Those character conclusions seem out of left field. However, if you were awake during your 9th grade literature class or paying attention to when this show was on, it all added up and made sense. I don't know why this is a struggle for people.
Well, it was. I still don't understand why she made that switch at the beginning of that season. Again, there's no A to B on that.
And that's a fair point. But now that it's been made, and then you get to this bit where she's sacking an entire city atop a dragon, that's not as far as a leap. It's not as far as a leap as was made to be in everything from professional rags and writers to the people I work with. So, but I wanted to. We'll round back to Daenerys and the conclusion of this thing in a little bit. What I wanted to say is, then there are some characters who elicit no sympathy, and you're just waiting for shit to happen to them. Joffrey. Oh, boy.
I do credit Joffrey's actor that he was able to walk away and just not get so consumed by the hatred of his characters or anything like that. He's doing pretty well, and from what I've seen, he's still making movies and stuff.
Good for him.
My wife was telling me that he actually had to take a break from acting for a while because he was being typecasted as that character and that type of character and other stuff. And he needed to separate him. He needed to redefine himself as an actor and sort of separate himself from that legacy character because it was ruining his career. which I can totally see.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, he is a really phenomenal actor. Again, I can't think of any actors in this series that did a poor job. I really can't.
No, everyone pretty much connects circles around just about anybody. So we're talking about, scenes and characters, the sort of ebb and flow with good and evil. Any other thoughts on this before we move on to something else?
I'm holding off on talking about Daenerys.
Gotcha. So we move out of the first season, and then it's the next couple of seasons. It's sort of the round robin. It's a warring of kingdoms and tribes. We also, and we haven't talked about this yet, we get a long, hard slog of a storyline involving the North. This is to get us to the Night King. This, Jon's story is his beginnings to end is all about getting to the Night King and the Whites, and ultimately the Battle of Winterfell. And it takes a zillion seasons to get there. Alexis? What did you think of Jon's story and the B plots involving the Night's Watch?
It does slog on, but once again, we're given some really great characters to watch in the meantime. I don't think anyone is ever going to say that they didn't enjoy watching Jon's interactions with, Samwell Tarly. Yeah. Who, I'm sorry, George R. R. Martin has admitted, he's basically Samwise Gamgee 2.0.
He's the bard of this thing, isn't he? He's the storyteller.
Sort of.
He actually has one of the stronger arcs, as far as characters go. So many characters you say like have strong arcs, but they're so short. It's like, okay, they're not so much of an arc as you are a tight circle. He lasts the entire series, so he goes from this sort of outcast, tarnished royalty. He's sent to the Night's Watch, and he's a coward, and he doesn't want to fight. And by the end of it, he's this learned scholar, and he's sitting at the table of the king. That's a hell of, and along the way he kills a white or two. That's a hell of a journey. And he's the first one ever to kill a white. Actually, they talk about that before the Battle of the Winterfell. Mm-hmm. He's more of a hero than I think the average fan gives him credit for, considering more so than any of the Starks, if he doesn't make the discoveries that he does, and he doesn't have the story, the story that he does, the North never finds out that death is coming, and it'll probably be too late when it does happen. And I feel like that's an often overlooked thing, is that him discovering you can kill a white with dragon glass, and the information that he passes on to Jon, and then Jon ultimately passes on to everybody else, I think is a really important detail.
There's also the fact that he's such a great character in itself, the way he saves Gilly from her, or Gilly, I can't remember exactly how it was pronounced. Gilly becomes pretty much a stepfather to her child, and she genuinely falls in love with him. Now, this is the joke character who usually gets thrown away for the wayside and has the pratfalls. He does everything right, and it's amazing.
Yeah, he starts out as kind of a comic relief character, and like as I said, I think he becomes one of the biggest heroes of the series. David, your thoughts here on the Night's Watch?
Well, yeah, I think a lot of it is the interactions between Jon, Sam, and their group, that sort of camaraderie that comes of that. And with the Night's Watch, it's just this organization that nobody takes seriously anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like they basically get the dregs of society and have to try and build them up into something worth using. And like Jon is just such high value to them, in that you have the son of a lord who's had like all that training in combat and leadership, and they seize on that, and you sort of see he comes into Alistair Thorne's territory, and it's just instant hatred there, and it's Jon having to navigate through those areas. Probably the biggest story, other than what we've already mentioned with Sam, is when Jon eventually does take on being the Lord Commander, and Meister Aemon says, you have to kill the boy to become the man. It's you can't be a nice guy and lead this organization effectively. You need to make some hard decisions, and you need to sometimes do some terrible things, and we sort of see him struggle with that, and eventually like having to execute the mutineers after he gets killed and resurrected. But yeah, it's just
we need to put a pin in that. Okay, yeah. I need to talk about that because there are a couple of times where I sort of pushed through the series, even though I had huge eye roll moments, and I was like, ugh, really, we're doing this now? To where I think under normal circumstances it would have lost me, but there was there was a lot of gravity with everything else going on that I stayed with it despite these moments where I was like, this is the dumbest thing ever. But I'll come back to that. Go ahead.
Yeah, and it's just with Jon's story, it's just everything is about figuring out how to defeat the White Walkers and working towards that end. I think even George R. R. Martin has said that Jon is by far the most classical hero of the bunch, or he has that classical hero's arc.
Yeah, there's very much the hero of 1,000 faces with Jon. He's the most worthy, but he doesn't want the power. That sort of thing. That old trope.
Yeah, and he's also like not a superhuman person. Like you see, like when he goes up north and is forced to live amongst the wildlings. Like the meme. You know nothing, Jon Snow. Like he doesn't know everything, and he does get his ass kicked quite a bit. But in the end, it's him learning from that.
I was truly moved and saddened when when him and the redheaded wildling chick, Ygritte, yes, where they have a season where they meet, they fall in, they're enemies, but then they fall in love, and there's this moment where, and this is where they're sowing the seeds of, I think, what makes Jon's conclusion satisfying, if you were paying attention, that truly his kingdom is freedom. His kingdom is freedom. It's what he truly wants, but he is obligated to these other causes and issues that keep drawing him back in. But I think ultimately what he wants is to live free of all of that. And so in Ygritte, she sort of symbolizes that for him, and she ends up dead.
Yeah, it's also, again, like there's no real like heroes and villains in terms of sides in this conflict. Like even the wildlings, they have culture, they have personality. They're not evil people wanting to do bad just to do bad. They're people who are trying to escape, this coming force that's going to kill all of them, except for the Thens. Everybody hates them.
Well, I think the other thing about the wildlings is they are the people that refuse to live under a king. They want nothing to do with the rest of Westeros. They want to be, free to. They want to be free to be themselves. If they, if you want a sort of somewhat modern day thing about this is the old South. Just leave us the hell alone. that old card. So let's go back to it now, and then we'll talk about some of the other arcs and characters here. We'll come back to Jon at the very end. So the death and his resurrection. Now, I get that there's some degree of magic. I mean, there are dragons on the show, so this is high fantasy. I get all of that, but this is a personal thing. This isn't necessarily a critical analysis point. Just my own ugh. Killing him and bringing him back to life. It was a great cliffhanger moment. The multiple stabbings. It was done really well, and it was heartbreaking. Then spending an episode or two trying to bring him back to life and then succeeding, and it having zero toll on him, on his humanity, on any, this, he didn't leave anything behind. I just thought it was this is cheap heat. This is dumb.
Yeah, it was more him just dealing with his death. Like you sort of see, like after he executes the mutineers, he just is like, now my watch has ended. I'm out of here. Like I'm done.
Yeah, they basically say you swore that you would, defend us till your dying breath. And he goes, yeah, I took my dying breath. I'm done.
Yeah, loophole.
Well, there is also the fact that he doesn't remember anything from when he was dead. He saw no glimpse of the afterlife. He's asked multiple times, did you see the Lord of Light? Did you see the seven gods? Was there anything after? And he says he remembers nothing. He may as well have just passed out and then woken back up on that table.
Right. I feel like, I don't know if that's what George R.R. Martin wrote in one of his books, that he dies and is resurrected.
I don't think that's covered by the books. I think John is still alive. I think, or did he just get stabbed and they haven't? I'm pretty sure they didn't bring him back in the books.
Okay,
it's been a while since I read them, but I'm pretty sure the resurrection wasn't there yet.
Yeah, for the record, let's establish that all three people taking place on this podcast, none of us have read the books.
Okay, well, I have.
Oh, sorry. Okay, yeah, but it's been a while. No, I think I think the last book published ends on his death. If that's what I was.
I think that's the last we see of John is when he dies. I mean, I assume just like, okay, they have a red priest, and we know that the red priest can bring people back because of Beldrick Dondarrion and Lady Coldstone, who's not in the show.
I want to say that the was there another resurrection in the show? I know the one guy keeps coming back to life until he doesn't. The dude with the one eye in Arya's storyline.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's Beldrick Dondarrion.
Yeah,
best voice.
But I think that's the only character. Anyway,
in the book there's one more character that the Red Priest brings back.
I thought it cheapened. I thought bringing him back and then the act of bringing him back alone, I thought cheapened that entire storyline and the scene of him dying. So there's that. But then,
it very much feels like he had been written into a corner and needed an out.
Yeah, but then I'll take it a step further and say that they don't really acknowledge it until they acknowledge it for like an episode or so, and then it's not even a thing. Like, I forgot he was dead this season. Like, it has no toll on him. There's no talk of night terrors or feeling like my soul was left behind. There's none of that. So essentially, you have this really climactic event, this event that should have carried a lot of gravity to it, and it has no consequences.
Well, it got Kit Harington out of a speeding ticket.
Okay. Anything else about John in the Night's Watch?
I did really like, again, I'll agree with you that maybe there should have been a little bit more character development on just the psychological dealing of, holy crap, I was dead.
Yeah.
But I do like how they handled the resurrection. The fact that we had to wait 2 whole episodes for it. They didn't just do it right away. And you have that amazing part at the end of the second episode where they think it didn't work and they walk out and suddenly he wakes up and then it cuts to black.
Sure.
That was just very well done.
A little less impactful when you have the entire, when you don't have to wait that week, to see what's going to happen next. You're just like, oh, and the next episode, and there he is. Fantastic. So I wanted to bring this up before, but one of the impactful things of season 1, so I can sort of forgive its sins for not, being a little on the boring side, is that at the end of it, the Stark family is in a million pieces. Sansa is essentially a hostage in the Lannister castle. Arya has escaped. She's taken out of King's Landing. You've got Robb, who is starting a war in his father's name and declaring the North independent. John's already in the Night's Watch. I think that's and Bran. I don't think at this point Bran has fled Winterfell. Correct?
Let me take a look.
I think he doesn't flee Winterfell until Theon takes it over.
Okay.
So I think we've got a couple of seasons before that happens.
So
it looks like I think Theon takes over Winterfell in season 3 because then Theon takes over Winterfell. But then Lord Tywin Lannister basically tells the Boltons, go get Winterfell, get the Greyjoy out of there, and that leads to arguably one of the biggest villains in the entire series, Ramsay Bolton. Yikes.
Yeah, well, we'll get to him in a moment, but Okay, so but most of the Stark family at this point has been broken up and scattered across the continent, and so a big pull on the series is, well, what becomes of the Starks now? So you have Sansa, who's sort of dealing with Joffrey, and then not dealing with Joffrey, and then she's betrothed to Tyrion. I think they're actually married at one point.
Yes, they do get married.
They both consider it a sham wedding. They're just they talk about it in the final season. It's like, if we were actually, it's like, I guess, while we were married, they don't consider themselves truly married.
Yeah, sure.
It was a political marriage.
Mm-hmm.
I think I don't feel like they do a tremendous amount with Sansa until after Joffrey is dead, and then
most of it's her just surviving with him.
I think one of the more interesting characters, and and again, so the kinds of things they have her doing in the final season, all tie back to this journey that she goes on as Arya, to the point where now everyone's demanding that she have her own series, which is one of the few stupid things that I agree with. I would enjoy What's West of Westeros, starring Arya Stark.
Essos.
I actually like Sansa's growth as a character. She starts off as this whiny little teenager who's like, I'm in love with Joffrey. I'm going to marry him. I'm going to become queen. She's just a very dumb teenager. But you really come to feel for her because after her father's killed, she's essentially held hostage. Mm-hmm. She's being tortured. I remember at least one episode where Joffrey threatened to kill her over something that one of her brothers did. He's aiming a crossbow at her.
Yes.
In the courtyard, and she's sitting there. She has no defense.
Mm-hmm.
She has nothing that she can say. She's like, I am not my brother. I have no contact with my brother. I don't know what's going on. And then when Joffrey decides to break off his engagement to her to marry Marjorie Tyrell, she thinks she's in the clear, but then Tywin arranges the marriage of Sansa to Tyrion, and she still can't get out of King's Landing. Lord Tywin has essentially said, you're not marrying my son, but I'm going to make sure that I'm keeping you here as my, one claim over the North.
I think where I stand on Sansa is I don't feel like she makes a tremendous amount of character. Her story is interesting enough to watch because, her having to just survive Joffrey in this abusive relationship. The kid lives for torture. I think there's even a scene where Tyrion tries to get him laid, and he's like, no, I'd rather shoot crossbows at people. That sort of thing. But I feel like...
Yeah, he forces one of the prostitutes to beat the other prostitute to death with a mace.
But I think Sansa makes leaps and bounds of growth after dealing with Ramsay. It's brutal and it's horrifying, and there's nothing good about it. But I feel like that's where her character really takes off. And so the Sansa that you see in season 7 and 8 is a direct result of the stuff that happened after King's Landing.
Yeah, like what I feel Sansa's arc should be is, she starts off being a silly little girl who believes in the fairy tales. I will marry the prince and he will be beautiful and kind to me, and we will have princes and princesses and live the opulent life, rule the lands. And then she realizes this guy is a sadistic, twit. This guy is a monster. And it's an interesting thing that at King's Landing, basically, all the people who are the nicest to her are the types of people that she would stay the farthest away from, like the Hound, Tyrion. These are all the ugly people, the monsters, and yet the most beautiful person, Joffrey, physically I'm talking here, is the most messed up inside. And I think the idea with Sansa is like through her getting through the situation, through her being near all these people who know how to play the game, like Cersei, Marjorie, eventually Littlefinger, she kind of, she grows and starts to realize, like, hey, I need to learn how to play this game. I need to know how to use my being a beautiful young woman by, me being the heir to a powerful house, and just, learn how to play the deception and the manipulation so that, I can get out of this alive, sort of thing. Now, they don't quite show it very well in it, and it kind of starts to go that way with when she starts to, spend more time with Littlefinger, but then they kind of jump off of that the moment she gets married off to Ramsay, and then it's kind of back to survival mode until, that's eventually resolved, which is probably one of the most satisfying moments of the show.
For all the whining that's occurred once the show ended, I'm really surprised that, especially in the political climate that we're in now, I'm actually surprised people aren't like running around with pictures of Sansa on a sign going, she essentially got the ending that she wanted. She became queen. She's Queen of the North. And,
Well,
is that not a victory for that character and for people who, well, go ahead, Alexis.
Well, answering that, there's actually something that came up here in season 8 that people really threw a fit about. I believe I want to say it's in episode 4. I believe it's after the Battle of Winterfell. Sansa is talking with, I don't even remember who she's talking with, but they're discussing all the horrors that she has gone through, everything she went through with Joffrey, with Ramsay, with Littlefinger, and she says something to the effect
she was talking to the Hound.
Yes, and she's talking about how it's made her a stronger person. And there was this outcry on social media, people saying, "Oh, so getting raped makes you a stronger person?"
No, it's. I mean, I can understand them leaping to that because she did get raped, but it's what does not kill you makes you stronger. It's like the strongest people tend to be the ones who have dealt with harsh stuff because they know how to get through that.
It's a bit of a leap in logic for the people who are just like for it to go that far, because it isn't so much you need to be raped to be strong. It's that she in fact was raped. This is a thing that unfortunately happens to some people, more people than it obviously should, and she came away a stronger person. She, this is something that we encourage in people. Tragedy and trauma happens to you. You not only just survive it, but it strengthens you. It strengthens your resolve. And but of course, now bad things should never happen to women. That's apparently the lesson here. And and every character should always be written. Every woman character should always be written as fucking perfect, and nothing bad ever happens to them. That's the lesson.
But I would just add, like, even if you took the rape out of it, she's still been through a hell of a lot.
Yeah, she was in an incredibly abusive relationship with Joffrey. The guy threatened to kill her on more than one occasion.
He forced her to watch the death of her father, and then he threatened her with his decapitated head, saying, "Okay, so there's your dad's head, and then I'm going to marry you, and then I'm going to kill your brother. I'm going to put his head right up there next to your dad's."
Lesser things have caused PTSD.
Yeah, it's like the one regret I have of this show is I really wish that Joffrey had gotten a better comeuppance. Like, I really wish Rob. Well, I mean, he got poisoned. It looked like a painful death. Don't get me wrong, but because the thing about Joffrey is he is a coward. Like, he talks really big. He's like, "Oh, I'm going to get your brother here, and I'm going to take this knife, and I'm going to carve a smile in his face," and he's just grinning like he's hot stuff. And then you get to the Battle of the Blackwater, or was it Blackwater? The Siege of King's Landing, basically. And he's and he's basically like in the center of the keep, hiding under his mother's skirts.
Yes.
The moment anyone actually stands up to him, he is just like a complete wuss. And you just wanted to see that moment where Rob enters into the throne room, Joffrey's there, and he's just draws his sword. It's like, right, you think you're tough enough to take me on? Let's do this. And you just see Joffrey just soil himself and beg and weep for his life.
Yeah, he's Shawn Michaels circa 93, 94.
Yeah, you want to just see him have that just stripped off of him, and just what a pathetic person he really is for all to see. But that's not usually how that stuff works out.
No, but that's why when at the end, and when King's Landing, the Red Keep falls on top of Jaime and Cersei, and people are like, "Oh, fuck the show! They didn't get stabbed by Daenerys or whatever. They didn't get a proper comeuppance." I was like, that happened a lot during this show, where characters got a comeuppance. They may have gotten a comeuppance, but it certainly wasn't this truly satisfying. The person who is wronged has their revenge on the person that you want. There was a lot of castles falling on people, and people being poisoned and shit happening when you're like, well, they're dead now. I guess that's a thing.
Well, it's like when the Lord of Winter was killed and everyone lost their minds. Like, so wait a minute. Game of Thrones suddenly killed off an important character without any warning. Is this your first time watching the show?
I was like, yeah, I saw that complaint, and I was like, was the Red Wedding not a thing?
Yeah, but at least, in contrast to Joffrey, when you have Ramsay, where he's just as much of a sadistic jerk as as Joffrey is, except he actually follows through. Like again, like if you have Joffrey in a one-on-one fight, he'll run and cry and beg. Ramsay will just be like, "All right, let's go." Like he just
wasn't that actually said of Joffrey? Like he would be much more dangerous if he actually followed through. Or somebody makes a comment about following through in talking about Joffrey. It might have actually been said about Ramsay. It's like Ramsay is worse. Ramsay is essentially another Joffrey, only he follows through.
Yeah, but his comeuppance was so much better. I mean, again, like you cannot imagine a horrible enough fate for someone like that. Mm. But when Sansa sicks his own dogs on him, that was just poetic. Like the one thing in this world that he actually has anything approaching love for is his dogs. And in the end, it's they turn on him, and he just gets his comeuppance for being just that much of a terrible person. And I'd imagine being eaten alive by a bunch of dogs is a pretty slow and painful way to go.
Absolutely. The truth is, I think there are 3 villain deaths that actually are satisfying. I mentioned that Viserys is one of them. Ramsay is definitely the other one. I say Lord Baelish is the third.
Yeah. Well, no, Tyrion killing his father I thought was good too.
Yeah, well, since we're on that topic, with Littlefinger's death, I like the setup where it's like him trying to manipulate Sansa and Arya against each other, and basically them figuring out before ahead of him, and that's what comes to bite him in the end. It's sort of his one weakness is his love for Catelyn, which then transfers into Sansa, and that's where he lets his guard down and kind of lets her peek behind his mask, and then he basically creates this person who knows as much as he does about this stuff, and that's what does him in. But they kind of rushed a bit through to it, and it was just when he was on his knees begging and crying, I never imagined that being the way Littlefinger goes out. Like I imagine him to be the kind of person where like his last words are, "I regret nothing." Like he just
See, I love that that's the way he went out. I was so happy to see this man who has always been in control, who always has this confidence, finally have the rug pulled out from under him and not be able to get back up. That's what I wanted to see out of him the whole time. It was like when he goes, he needs to know that he has lost.
Yeah, I think it was because of like his ladder speech, which was just a fantastic scene, where it sort of shows that he knows that if he slips up just once, he's gone. Mm-hmm. But that's the excitement of it, and that's what pushes him forward. And then I just always assumed that you get to that if he did get to that moment where the rug is pulled out from under him, he's caught, and he has to pay for it. He'll be like, I did everything I could. I have no regrets.
Unless there's anything more about Sansa or the characters connected to Sansa, which seems to be the way that we're doing this, which makes sense to me. I really do want to talk about Arya and her arc, because she has probably the most fun storyline. I mean, she goes from captor, and she even more so than I think Jon. Jon is your classic hero, but she goes on this phenomenal journey. I mean, I think a better comparison is she's kind of what's his face, Bilbo. She never meant to go on this adventure, but she does, and she comes back this whole other person. If you in the live action Hobbit movie, Gandalf saying to Bilbo, something along the lines of, if you come with us, you're gonna, you'll never come back the same. You'll be a completely different person. And that's, and though Arya, likes her sword fighting and is kind of a tomboy, she's the antithesis of Sansa, she's still a far cry from where she started. And I'd like to point out that she was also 18 in the last season. I think people need to know that. Ugh.
Yeah, I mean, you go from, what was she, like, let's say 12-ish at the start of the show. Like, you change a lot, even without having your family murdered in front of you. Yeah. In that time period. You don't need to go and join a secret order of assassins to become a different person.
To have growth.
But through that phase of your life.
But yeah, she has some pretty amazing stories, She spends the first couple of seasons being captured, and then eventually she gets out, and you see her heart starting to harden, and She starts going down this really dark path. She has this whole season arc in Bravos, and then, I think therein lies there was temptation for her to continue down this dark path and really trade away her soul, or she can maintain some semblance of humanity and stay true to herself. And of course, she chooses the latter instead of the former. Which when she comes back to Winterfell and is reunited with her family, she's a hero, and she ends up being the hero they needed in the Battle of Winterfell. What was the complaint about that? I guess Jon should have killed the Night King. Is that what everyone was expecting?
More or less. Some people say that the death came out of nowhere. Although if you actually rewatch it,
again, is this your first time watching Game of Thrones?
Well, what I thought was interesting, I rewatched that scene, the part where Jon is standing up to zombified Viserion, the dragon, and it looks like he's shouting something. He's shouting, "Go!" And you realize, if you watch again, you realize he looks over. They don't show it, but you realize he sees Arya running, and he's offering to distract the dragon so she can get to the Night King and to Bran.
Let me also say that, I'm comparing her to Bilbo, and the whole thing about Bilbo and the rest of the Hobbits and the Lord of the Rings series was no one expects the Spanish Inquisition. Nobody expected the Hobbits to do any of what they did. They were these farmer characters that lived in a paradise far from the problems of the world, and they were inconsequential. That is why essentially Frodo got picked to be the ring bearer, was that, it was the idea of which was Sauron would never have expected this hobbit to trek all the way to Mordor and do away with the ring.
He also has no aspirations to power.
Right. So he makes the perfect candidate to carry around this horrible manipulating magical object. Arya kind of fits into that category of high fantasy hero. You don't expect this tiny little girl to stab a mythical zombie lord. But that's exactly what happens. And so when it happens, I was like, okay, yeah, that made perfect sense. She's doing what the hero character and these fantasy characters do. She does the unexpected. Obviously, I mean, if you're looking for analogous characters, Jon is Aragorn, she's Frodo, and they both lived up to those characters perfectly. I'm guessing a lot of other people just either don't make that connection or didn't see Lord of the Rings, because there's no other way you walk away from that conclusion going, hey, the wrong person stabbed the Night King, if you did.
Well, the thing with the hobbits is they mostly just want to go back home and, put their feet up by the fire and smoke some pipeweed. Arya basically wanted to learn how to fight, and then after season 1, she wanted to kill everyone that she didn't like. And at the end of the show, she's basically killed everyone that she didn't like, or they died by other means.
Right.
So she's not much of a reluctant hero. It just so happened that she had spent some time cultivating a specific set of skills that make her very dangerous to someone like the Night King.
Well, again, take away Frodo's hobbit hole and and everything else around him. I'm pretty sure he's a different character too. That and we're back to Daenerys again. But I think that's it. Is if you're going to compare it, do a side-by-side comparison of sort of the themes of Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones. Lord of the Rings doesn't deal a tremendous amount with loss. Game of Thrones does. And, it's very much about how loss affects people and the decisions that they make. And, whereas Lord of the Rings was more about temptation and power and how it corrupts, as far as themes go. I'm willing to hear an argument to the latter if you've got one, but that's the way I see it. All right.
Yeah, I never. Maybe Alexis, do you want to chime in right now?
You can go ahead and go first.
Okay, I mean, like the one thing you could probably critique Game of Thrones with is that there doesn't really seem to be a super set ideology behind it. I'm not really sure what the message it is trying to convey.
Well, I mean, I threw out there that I think a big theme of the show is loss. Would you agree or disagree?
I I didn't really see it as much. I mean, certainly loss happens and characters have to deal with it, but I never really saw it as being like thematic to the characters or the show. It was more like survival.
Okay.
Like it was, again, like to me, it just seems to be more of like, let's do high fantasy, but do it with more sort of historical accuracy. Let's, make it more like this is how the real world works.
Well, yeah,
as opposed to,
I think
like
in a very mechanical sense, you're not wrong. I think I'm trying to dig into the what you call it, under the underlying meanings of things. Dig beneath the surface. Alexis, what do you think?
George R. R. Martin has gone on record saying that he wasn't writing a story with a happy ending. This was always meant to be, in a way, a tragedy. And, yeah, I think that grieving and loss is a fundamental part of it, but I also think that kind of backfired, especially with the last season, because I think fans were starting to expect more loss than we got.
Really?
I know that when we got to the Battle of Winterfell with the Night King, there was actually a complaint because people were expecting a whole lot more characters to die off. And in the end, we lost, 4 characters, and none of them were any of the major ones?
Yeah, there was a complaint from Andre at Midnight's Edge that too many characters were given a suit of plot armor to get them to the finale that they otherwise shouldn't have had, based on the other series where they killed people rather quickly and rather often. I don't know how much I agree with that. I mean, go ahead.
Yeah, like I would say, like the biggest problem with ending Game of Thrones is that George R. R. Martin has created this very, the word escapes me, but it's sort of very dark world. Nihilistic. There we go. That's what I was looking for. We had this very nihilistic world where it's sort of it's all about, like the hero can be killed all of a sudden out of nowhere, basically, and then, but we also kind of want there to be that sort of heroic ending, that sort of satisfying conclusion. So, like getting the two to mesh together is like a really hard thing to achieve, and I think that's just like the biggest problem of the series is. Yeah, how do we have a satisfying ending to this downer story?
All right. We've covered, I think, the major characters outside of Daenerys, which I wanted to save for the end. I want to ask you guys 2 things. One, I'm going to ask you, what was your favorite battle? There's a lot of siegecraft. Here's one of the things I really love about this show: the siegecraft. It's one of the reasons why I love the Two Towers and Return of the King, because you've got the Battle of Helm's Deep and then the Battle of Pelennor Fields, and then the skirmish at Mordor. And one of the things I loved about those was the element of siegecraft, that they were very, very specific things that they did to show you how to break down what purpose does the castle serve in reality, and how then do you break down the castle so that you can kill all the people inside of it? How do you have this? And then Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, rather. You have this open field battle. To a degree, was also siegecraft. They were trying to get inside Gondor, but here in Game of Thrones, you've got the Battle of the Blackwater. This is one of my personal favorites, and I'll tell you why in a second. You've got the Battle of the Bastards, the Battle of Winterfell. You've got the siege of King's Landing. There's more. I'm sure I'm just forgetting them. I'm trying to do this off the top of my head. I personally loved, this is my favorite one, it was the Battle of Blackwater. The use of the wildfire, which is, I guess, supposed to be like napalm, I thought was great. And it was because you had the setup essentially was that this fleet should have taken King's Landing. It's a battle they should have won, and won pretty handily. And Tyrion outsmarts an entire fleet and practically burns it to the ground, using the wildfire, which I thought was pretty inventive, especially for the time that it took place. But that was mine. Alexis, what was your favorite battle in this?
For theatrical sake, I have two. For theatrical sake, it would be the Battle of Winterfell. The scale and size of it was amazing. The use of everyone from the Unsullied, the Dothraki, and just the Stark troops. The way that they had the threat both outside and inside, with the Night King raising the dead in the crypt where everyone was hiding. The use of the dragons. But personally, the one that I felt the most invested in is probably the Battle of the Bastards. The fact that I love that it starts with Jon basically telling Ramsay, let's just do our dispute on single combat, and Ramsay says no. And that scene where Jon is overwhelmed and climbing out of the infantry just looks like, I don't even know what it looks like. Looks like somebody just trying to, stay afloat in water. It's insane. And then you get the rest of the troops coming in. Jon runs in after Ramsay, and Ramsay like, okay, maybe we can do, one-on-one combat now. And I don't know why. I just love seeing Ramsay get his comeuppance that way. And again, that was a death that was truly satisfying, and I do love how it builds up. I love the scene where he keeps trying to shoot Jon with an arrow, and Jon grabs that shield and just blocks every single shot. It was so passionate and powerful, and I really felt it.
I just wish they tied some shields to 1-1.
Oh, we all miss the giant.
Yeah, it's like seriously, like you could have two shields on each leg. They would basically one for the thighs, one for the calves, like. Some around, they could have put a bit of armor, makeshift armor on that guy.
So the big complaint about the Battle of Winterfell was you couldn't see shit. You want to speak to that, Alexis, real quick?
That did kind of bother me a little bit. Although at the same time, I think that was what they were really going for. I mean, let's face it, it was creepy when you have the Dothraki charging with their, what are those, scythes? Scythes? Is that what they're using?
I'm not really sure there's a name for that, but sure, scythes works.
Yeah, with the scythes, the flaming scythes, which, let's face it, Melisandre setting all of those on fire was awesome. And you have them just riding off the distance, and suddenly all the fires are extinguished. Yes, it's dark, but at the same time, that was genuinely terrifying that each flame went out, and you had no idea what had happened, how far in they got, or anything. So it was dark, but it
full of terror.
Very true.
Yep.
So I think it kind of worked a little bit for me. It was a little bit of a complaint. Then again, I also wish that we had seen it in a little bit higher definition, because our version was a little pixelated. But what are you going to do?
I thought some of it was a little unreadable, but, okay, war. I don't know how many of you have actually been a part of a war, or at the very, 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 very minimum, gone and played like laser tag or paintball or something. You don't always know where shit's coming from, and things aren't always as readable as you'd like them to be. So I thought I didn't mind some of the unreadability of the battle. They were doing it at night. Again, this wasn't the Battle of Pelennor Field where it was broad daylight. This was the middle of the night, and it's not like they had big, stadium lights to play under. They're out in the fucking woods, so in winter. So I was okay with it. I think, and it presented an element of realism that I thought the show needed. And I think you just had to pay attention to the context of things to figure out what was happening. And I was very, very sad when the one late little girl, Lady Lord, got killed by the undead giant. That made me sad.
Lyanna.
Yeah.
One of my best friends, she and her husband actually said that when they have their first child, if it's a daughter, they want to name her Lyanna after that character.
Well, I hope Lyanna doesn't get brought back to life then and inflame an entire city, because then they're going to feel sheepish.
Oh no, she got brought back to life, and then she died shortly after Arya stuck it to the Night King.
That's right.
Oh no, don't worry, Lyanna Mormont is dead. Yeah, I forgot for a second what her banner was.
All right, go ahead, Dave. Your favorite battle in the show?
Yeah, well, first, Lyanna Mormont easily on the short list for best character.
Yes.
Agreed.
Yeah. So again, I have not seen all of the last season yet, so I can't comment on the Battle of Winterfell. I think I'm with you, Mark, on the Battle of Blackwater. Like tactically, it was neat to sort of see how the whole plan worked out, and there's a lot of good sort of character stuff and classic sort of siege scene stuff going on there. The first one I went to was actually the first battle of the series where Tyrion just gets knocked out and then he wakes up afterwards. It's almost like they had a budget.
Yeah, isn't that what they did with the Battle of the Five Armies in the third Hobbit movie?
No, that was the exact opposite. That thing went on forever.
In the books, he's knocked out and misses the whole thing.
Yeah, that's what happens. I think actually he just kind of like takes a look around. It's like, well, this is stupid, and he just like walks up to like the nearest hill and just kind of sits there and waits for it to pan out.
Yeah. No,
It's good for sneaking, not so much in open warfare.
Yeah, I was gonna say the unfortunate problem with the Battle of the Five Armies was it was way too compartmentalized. Like you get a little bit of the war, at the beginning and then at the end, but the middle is all kind of one-on-one battles with orcs on the ice, or the orcs hunting them down one by one. But anyway, okay,
Thor removing all of his armor.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and pitch it to you guys for just kind of a quick burning desires, things unsaid, any characters that we hadn't gone over or bits of the show you want to go. Just this is the opportunity for you to sort of take control of the conversation and talk about whatever it is you want to talk about before we talk about Daenerys and the end of this damn series. So I'll go ahead. So I keep myself consistent here. Alexis, burning desires, etc., etc.
Trying to think. I've brought up most of the characters I think I wanted to discuss. I'm going to think here. Actually, you know what? I think one of my favorite arcs was the story with the Hound.
Yes.
The Hound is honestly one of my favorite characters. I love just how determined, how vicious.
Oh, sorry. Wait a minute. Yarp. Same
Sorry,
actor,
what?
guys. Have you seen Hot Fuzz?
Yes.
It's been ages.
Okay, so you remember Danny, the big guy who was kind of slow and inbred, who kept on saying "yarp"?
I think so. Yeah. Oh, that's the same actor.
Same actor.
Oh God, now I got to go rewatch that movie.
So, why are you complaining? Hot Fuzz is one of the best films ever made. Probably the best comedy made in the last decade.
Oh no, agreed.
Admittedly, the field is very barren, but...
Okay, sorry. I'm a little bit more partial to Shaun of the Dead when it comes to the Cornetto trilogy.
fair enough. Oh, yeah, no worries.
I'm a zombie movie person. I love zombie movies.
Yeah, no worries. No judgment here.
Yeah. So, no, I love the story arc with the Hound, how he goes from protecting Arya to fighting Arya to hating Arya to protecting her to basically being a father figure to her. And the final battle with... Yeah, it kills me. Again, everyone talks about how the ending was such a disappointment. I sit there and go, did no one else watch the Battle of the Hound and the Mountain? Because that was awesome, and I loved it.
Ooh, I'm looking forward to that.
Oh, it was great. That was just something that had been built up so well. And honestly, you can complain back and forth over and over about how there's so many parts of the series that were built up too much and didn't have proper payoff. That is not one of them. The final fight between the Hound and the Mountain was one of my favorite parts of the finale. Well, it was the penultimate episode. They've had their fight in the episode 5 and then episode 6, but I loved it, and I love the Hound's character. I'm never going to forget the whole scene when he's in the tavern with Arya, and he basically says, it's like, if you keep talking, I'm going to have to eat every chicken in this place. Oh my God, I love that fight.
Yeah, I laughed pretty hard at that.
I like Cyril Forelli versus Mayron Trent. It's like you had a dancer with a sword. Mayron Trent had armor and a big fucking sword.
I didn't. There's a lot of interactions with the Hound and Arya that I truly adored. Though my favorite is actually in the Battle of Winterfell, where she just looks at him and goes, "Well, I'm not spending the last night on Earth with you, sad fuckers."
Yes.
Did either of you see like the Calvin and Hobbes things that someone did?
No.
Where
Yes.
basically they did Calvin and Hobbes, except it was Arya as Calvin and the Hound as Hobbes, and
That's funny.
they're pretty funny.
I hate to admit it, working at Comic-Cons, I have seen every character combo possible drawn as Calvin and Hobbes. Every single one.
I'd say another. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Another good moment with the two of them was just when I think Arya had killed a few people with him by then, and then she's, they're going to bed, and she's like saying her list out loud. He's like, "What is this list?" And she explains, "It's all the people I'm going to kill." It's like, "All right, finish your list." And then she just goes, "The Hound," and just the look on his face, like, "Ooh." Yeah, I think like the picture that best summarizes Arya for me is someone took like when Cersei is talking with Caitlyn at the banquet at the start of the show, and Caitlyn's like, "Oh, she's at that stage of life when young girls only have one thing's on their mind," and Cersei says, "Boys," and she goes, "No, murder."
Ain't that the truth?
Thank you, family values.
Yeah. Yeah, my outstanding things to talk about with the series. I guess talk about Rob a little bit. Whereas, again, like, you got the young hero who turns out to actually be a pretty smart guy, but in the end makes a horrible mistake that gets him killed.
Yeah.
And, like a lot of people, get on Walder Frey for the terrible betrayal of the Red Wedding, and I mean Walder Frey is like a terrible person. Don't get me wrong, but you also have to, if you look at it from his perspective, like he put everything on the line when he allied with Robb. And he said, like, I will put my house to join in open rebellion against the crown. If we lose, my head's on the spike right next to yours. And my price was that I get married into the new royal family. And then Robb totally messes it up because he just had to do the honorable thing and, marry the girl that he likes. That's what concubines are for. I mean, I know that sounds like a terrible thing, but this is how things work when you get to that level of politics,
Yeah, he had to go marry Charlie Chaplin's granddaughter.
Yeah.
You guys know that is who that actress is, right?
I did not know that. That's interesting. And you kind of see it like when they get Edmund to sort of marry, like he even he presents his daughter and like, this is the one I chose, and hey, she's pretty beautiful. Like, I was going to follow through. I made this agreement in good faith. And then he sort of springs it on, but you took it all and you threw it in my face, and Tywin offered me an out and I'm taking it. And you can't really blame him for doing that for his house.
True, but here's the problem. The problem isn't that he went back on, or that he betrayed Robb after Robb basically betrayed him. The problem is
not
that
basically. Robb full on betrayed him.
Okay, the problem is that he betrayed the Stark family after they had gone and eaten in his home. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I'm aware of the tradition. Yeah.
Yeah, the tradition is if you eat in the home, you are safe. And he went back on that. If he truly was against them, he should have turned them away at his home and said, "No, you screwed me over. Not interested. Get the hell out of here. I'm not going to help you."
Oh yeah, absolutely. That is correct. And I was cheering just as much as everyone when Arya finally got him in the end. But yeah, I would just in Frey's defense, I would point out that Robb did break a pretty major alliance, which was a very foolish thing to do, regardless of
love.
Yes, and look where that got him.
It was
Do I have to go back to Bronn in the Night of the Vale?
It was a romantic notion. He did it for love, and it worked out poorly for him.
It has led to a number of jokes I've made when I've been with friends who have guitars where I'll say, "Quick, play the Reigns of Castamere. Let's see how many people run."
Yeah. Yeah. Has anyone else pointed out there are only 2 songs in all of Westeros? I mean, it's pretty much either the Reigns of Castamere or the Bear and the Maiden Fair. Like that's it.
Yeah. Well, there's not a lot of time for songs.
The song that Podrick sings in season 8 is apparently a real song from the books.
I don't remember that one.
Again, there's
Well,
not a lot of time
anyway.
for songcraft when everyone's trying to kill you.
Well, but there's a lot more time for meals and heraldry if you've
Hey.
read the books.
Fair enough.
Seriously, every banner is described in excellent detail, and every meal.
Maybe someday, but today is not that day. All right. So if everyone's got their burning desires out, and we feel like we've covered this series as best as one can do in an hour, this is the grand finale, everybody. This is what you've been waiting for. Daenerys and the series finale.
I thought you were going to give a full title there.
So let's sum up Daenerys here. She is sold by her brother to a Mongol horde,
Basically.
to be the bride of said horde.
Yeah, pastoral nomads, if we want to get technical.
In one season, she is not. I don't know. I sexually assaulted. Maybe. I guess it depends on your point of view on that one. I thought, until she has the one conversation about how to handle him, it's all pretty rough and not particularly romantic. So there's that. She ends up having and then losing a child by this guy. She walks into a fire and discovers she's fucking magic, and now she's the mother of dragons. That's just season 1. The amount of trauma this woman experiences over the course of 7 to 8 seasons. I tend to think of 7 and 8 as one joint season. But then, as you pointed out, Dave, she's not just freeing slaves. She's also murdering a lot of people and demanding fealty or be burned by dragon fire. So
Yeah, the one happens after the other. It would be even more confusing if she's doing both at the same time.
you're free. That'd be hilarious, actually. So
Schrodinger's liberation.
yes. So I'm failing to see why somebody who has been solely focused on becoming queen of this continent is then gives her heart to a guy who actually turns out to be her rival for the throne, whether he wants it or not.
And her nephew.
And her dragon, two out of 3 dragons get killed, which she's very close with, being the mother of dragons and all. And then and then her best friend in the world, the translator, gets her fucking head cut off. Can someone in this group explain to me why it's not within this woman's psyche to go on a murder rampage? Because I read an article, and I'm going to throw this out there, that somebody actually proposed that was a new character. Okay, that the Daenerys that we had come to know over 7 seasons was gone and dead, and what we were introduced to in season 8 was the Mad Queen. And I read that and went, I'm not sure you've watched this series with any, with any real not paying attention. You just
taken literally, that makes no sense.
Of course it doesn't. Literally, of course it doesn't make sense. But I obviously the idea being that it was entirely 100% out of character for her to burn King's Landing to the ground. And I went, you couldn't possibly have been paying attention to this character then over the course of the amount of time the show has been on. You clearly were looking at your phone while the episodes were playing. So
if you're going to burn down one city in this world, could it be Karth? Because I hate those guys. Like every time they say the best city in the world that is and will be and ever was, I'm like, I want to challenge that.
I'm going to pitch it over to you, Alexis. What in the hell are the people who think Daenerys is incapable psychologically of making the decision she clearly made in rage? What are they watching? What are they seeing in this character that I'm missing? Or are they projecting onto her? What is happening in this world that this character is the brand new Luke Skywalker, a la The Last Jedi?
I have 2 parts to this. Firstly, they are projecting. This is a character that we have rooted for, that we have loved, that we wanted to see succeed, if for no other reason than Cersei is such a giant bitch.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people were not ready for her to go full on burn them all, burn them all, burn them all. I think that I think a lot of people were unhappy because they wanted to see her, save King's Landing. That we wanted to see her be the great queen that, that Westeros, I guess, deserves. And I use the term "I guess" with quotation marks.
Let's go with needs.
Okay, there you go. She is easily the most popular character. Again, I mean, you brought this up, Mark. How many people named their newborn daughters Khaleesi in the last 10 years?
Yeah.
Are they ever worried now?
Oh, undoubtedly. Then it was a stupid name to begin with.
It's not even her name, it's her title.
Yeah. I mostly just feel bad because my BFF for life is my best friend Danny, and I have actually jokingly called her Mother of Dragons. I even gave her 2 stuffed dragons for Christmas last year.
What'd you stuff them with? I personally like a nice seafood stuffing.
I thought you liked a nice chicken pasta stuffing.
Did you put it in the mail for me?
Oh, I'm sorry. You think I had time to go to the mailbox between our trailer react and this?
Taking care of your husband. I get it. Just, there's plenty of time when this podcast is over. You're an hour behind me. Let's move on.
But again, I think the other thing, and honestly, I do agree with the fans on one point. I do feel that her fall into the Mad Queen, because I do think there is definitely she's a Targaryen, and I do think that as hard as she fought to say I'm not my father, she kind of did turn into him a little bit. But I really do feel we could have seen a little bit more of her fall. If nothing else, I would have liked to have seen her a little more unhinged after Melande's death, because that was supposed to be the trigger that finally just pushed her over the edge. Right. But she seems totally in control until you hear the bells ringing, and then she's got that look on her face like, no, gotta kill them.
But, okay, but that's, okay, I gotta challenge that point. Not necessarily, maybe challenge is the wrong word here, but here's the thing, right? She went into that with murder in her heart because of what happened to, I thought it was pronounced Missandei. What the fuck is her name?
I always screw it up because there's Melisandre, the red woman.
Okay, I thought the translated name was Missandei.
Yeah, it sounds close. Yeah, it's Melisandre is the Red Priestess.
Okay. So where she is at the point at where the bells ring is gotta kill them all because they beheaded my friend. Okay, and so she's sitting there and she's like, and Tyrion keeps saying to her in the build up to this, if I can get him to surrender, will you not go on a murderous rampage? The woman said several times she wanted to kill everybody. At the point at which she's sort of irritated with Jon for telling everybody that he was heir to the throne and all of that. Just feeling like she was losing her grip on all the things. She says several times, let them fear me, and if I have to burn them to fear me, then so be it. And she's right there. She's ready to do it. And at this point, they are in the middle of a war, so she's justified. Okay, she is justified with every death she takes because this kingdom and the person leading it has challenged her. So she's ready to go. And then the bells ring, and she's robbed. She's robbed of her opportunity for revenge, and revenge is a powerful thing. It isn't the beheading that's the final straw. That's the final straw. It's the final indignity. It's the last thing taken from her in a series full of losses that she suffered. It came down to this. I at least get to kill all these people that I want to kill, and I was justified in killing up until right now. And then she got a case of the fuckets and burned everything. Okay? That's what happened there. And people are failing to realize that. People won't accept it. I don't know what's happening in the world these days, but that's what happened, people. I mean, I'm willing to accept the challenge on it, but that's the show that I saw.
I'll give you that, but still, I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of her kind of falling into that. So that was a bit more obvious.
So I'll go ahead and give you that, because here's the thing, and this also came from the fellows over at Midnight's Edge. The big complaint about the series finale versus the rest of the series was, you can accept certain, Bran as the king of Westeros, Sansa's Queen of the North, Daenerys falling into the Mad Queen character, Jon being sent away and then deciding, fuck it, I'm going to live free with the Wildlings. These are all more or less acceptable endings if you're given enough time to get there. And while I personally feel like we've had plenty, having just watched the whole damn thing not that long ago, remembered enough of the details to go, okay, this is all making sense to me. Things are lining up probably the way they should be. Maybe people had a different viewing experience and feel like, nope, not enough time. There wasn't enough time this season to get to where we finally ended. Now, some people just aren't satisfied with them because they, my favorite meme has been the Game of Thrones ending as presented by Disney, and it's Jon sitting on the throne and Tyrion's next to him, and he's got a kid on his lap, and Daenerys is there, and she's got a kid on her lap, and there's dragons in the background. Fantastic. I'm sure if Disney ever buys the rights to this and remakes it, that's what we're going to get. But
just wait 5 minutes.
Till then. But I think for the people who have a legit complaint that I'm just not seeing enough characterization and detail to get us to where we got to, not me personally, but I'm willing to at least buy that argument. What say you, Dave?
It's a little bit tricky because, again, I haven't seen most of the last season. I only really just went to the last episode because it's the one part of the show that hasn't been spoiled for me yet. And darn it, I'm gonna have one, okay? Just one episode of me getting to see everything happen before everyone tells me what it is. But I digress. I think, as I said at the beginning of the podcast, my kind of like wait what moment was at the beginning of the previous season where she just started basically acting like a slaver despite a career of slaves. So overall, from what I can gather, I somewhat agree that maybe they should have done like 10 episodes each for the past 2 seasons. It's not like they don't have enough money. And sort of use that time to flesh these sort of character beats out a little bit more so we can kind of see the madness begin and start to grow within Daenerys. As for your sort of killing Missandei was the last straw, and when the bells went, she just lost it. I mean, okay, like we have moments like that where you're just on the edge, and then it's just that one little thing pops up, and you're just, that's it, I'm going off the rails, and oh yeah, I have dragons. Bad combination. But like I have seen sort of in the aftermath where she just kind of follows through on it, where it's just like, no, we're gonna keep going. We're just gonna kill everyone and liberate the world. Yes, I'm the good guy. Yes.
Oh, sort of thing. Like, who was it? Was it? It was the one asshole senator, I think, politician who.
You're gonna have to narrow it down a lot from that.
Give me a minute. This was, I want to say, the 2004 primary, Democrat primary. He had ended up raising a lot of money on the internet. He was challenging Kerry, who ultimately won the thing. But going into Iowa, he was, because he had raised all this money on the internet, he was kind of like the big sensation, and Kerry thought, oh my God, this guy's gonna end up being challenged me. He came in like 4th or 5th in Iowa. But his speech was like, we're going to go to the thing, and we're going to go to New Hampshire, and we're going to go, yeah! At the end of it. Remember this?
Yep. No, I was not paying attention
You're
to
not.
that.
You're not.
Then again, I'm Canadian. So.
You're Canadian, damn it. Alexis, help me out here. Who am I talking about?
Hang on, I'm Googling.
Yeah, we tend to pay more attention to your federal level politics.
Okay. We're not counting a presidential primary as federal.
I guess you're right there, but yeah, we kind of
Democratic primary. Okay, it was basically between John Kerry, John Edwards, Howard Dean, Wesley Clark.
Howard Dean.
Yeah.
Howard Dean.
Oh,
okay,
Howard Dean. He was a nut job.
Yes. Do you remember at the? I believe it was after he loses Iowa big time, where he was like, "We're going to go to New Hampshire. We're going to go to this. We're going to go," and at the end of it, he did a yah.
Yeah, and it was essentially a meme before meme was a thing. That weird yell of his.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
missed that one.
Yep.
Maybe we're more concerned about later on in the process. But
So for
anyway,
all of you
I
listening to
digress.
for all of you listening to this, I am comparing Daenerys to Howard Dean. Take that.
Good thing we don't have a comment section. Yeah.
At this point, we have an audience.
Yeah. But yeah, so where from what I can see, it's like there would probably be a bit more of a like, oh wait a minute, I kind of really lost it there, guys, didn't I? Sort of moment for her. Like that would have been sort of a more non-crazed reaction to that,
Right.
in my opinion. But sort of, and I think there's also some absolute power corrupts absolutely, and I Have a Dragon is pretty powerful for this sort of world.
There is a sensation one gets shooting a gun. Can you imagine riding back a dragon and setting a city on fire?
Yeah, that would be pretty awesome.
Yeah.
But,
Have you seen the video where somebody put Trogdor over
I just saw
Drogon
that.
and played the music? That was awesome.
Yeah, but to get to kind of like the overall dissatisfaction with Game of Thrones, the final season, as well as a lot of the other things that have popped up lately, Star Wars. Like there's a Roman philosopher named Seneca, and like with philosophy, like a lot of it is people endlessly debating whether beauty is truth or truth is beauty. But every so often, a philosopher comes along and decides to actually deal with a real problem, and they also love thesauruses, by the way. It's like, oh geez, it's like who can use the most big words? But I digress. But Seneca sort of became a bit obsessed with like, why do people get angry? Because he noticed that like a lot of the people who have the least reason to get angry seem to be the most angry people. Like he went to like a fancy party thrown by like one of the wealthiest men in Rome, and one of the waiters at the party like tripped and like spilled the drink on the floor, and the owner, he just had him basically executed. And it's like dude, like people trip and spill stuff, like it happens. Like you're rich, why are you so unhappy? And basically the answer that he came to is people get angry when they have expectations that are not met. It's like when you're driving in traffic, right? You expect everyone to be like a great driver, just like you, right? And when someone doesn't live up to that standard, you get upset. And like I've seen this where the like relatives of mine where they're like, oh, he cut me off, so and so. But then you also get like, it's like, ooh, that guy, he's gonna pull out in front of me. He's gonna pull. Yep, see, he did it. He cut me off. But there's much less anger because it meets the expectations. So we have things where like people see like, oh, that's Anakin Skywalker's lightsaber. That was Luke's first lightsaber. Oh, this is so deep and meaningful. Like when he gets that lightsaber from Rey, he's gonna just totally like be overwhelmed by how deep and meaningful it is, and it's gonna kick off this whole series of event. And then he throws it off the cliff, and which I kind of knew would happen because I have seen a movie before, and. And then they just lose their minds because all this anticipation, all these expectations that they had been, cooking up for, 2 years were not met, and then they just go crazy. Whereas, like, I was just like, yeah, Luke's not going to be like into this whole come back and save the universe thing. So I just laughed. I'm like, yeah, all those guys with all those theories gone. And like, I think it's like when you get like a TV show, like Game of Thrones started off really solid. And it was able to keep itself up pretty high through most of its run. So going into the last season, I'm like, okay, this is not going to be awesome. My brains are not going to be blown out through my eye sockets by how awesome this is going to be.
Let me interject this. There aren't too many of these modern dramatic series that don't end tragically. I'll just rattle off 5. The Wire, The Shield, Justified, Oz, The Sopranos.
Yeah, Lost,
None of them.
Battlestar Galactica. I thought Battlestar Galactica wasn't too bad.
None of them have happy endings. None of them, are particularly satisfying. I mean, I still remember the last season of The Wire. Take a drink, everyone. And it's like you want I was telling somebody about this who had never seen it before. Like, you want McNulty to succeed. You want him to get away with it, but he doesn't. And the one guy who was truly passionate and really wanted to change things in Baltimore, and despite being a drunk and a cad, was deep down a good fella. was drummed out of his dream job, the thing that he was meant to do in life, trying to stop a murderer. And so you see him on a bridge, and the last thing he has to do as a cop is take a homeless guy back to Baltimore. Like, if you've seen any HBO, or FX, or one of these dramatic series, none of them end well. How did you not see this coming?
Yeah, I'm a semi-lax anime fan, and you want to talk about unsatisfying endings? Oh boy. Read the manga, folks. It's all commercial.
I remember walking out of Logan, and and you knew Wolverine was going to die at the end of that, but still seeing him impaled on the stump, and them burying him in the ground, and they tip the cross over so it makes an X instead of a cross. It still breaks your heart. It's still tragic, even though this character has had a life, and it's like I feel like there's an expectation to piggyback on what you were saying, Dave. There's an expectation, I think, for people who watch these things, that not only should it live up to whatever fanfic they've had in their own mind, but that it should have this satisfyingly positive ending. And that goes against almost every dramatic TV show I've ever watched. Number one, the trend. Number two, you were not owed a happy ending. I
just want a satisfying ending. Give me an okay ending. I'm okay with an okay ending.
This was satisfying. John got to be free. The guy who can see the future gets to be king.
Tyrion is okay. That was my one condition. Everyone else can burn. I just want Tyrion to be okay.
Tyrion gets to fix the mistakes that he's made in the past, and he actually has a great line. He was like, "I don't want to be the Hand. I don't want any of this." And he was like, "And that's why you're perfect for this role." By the way, just as an aside, it is said of George Washington that the reason why he was our first president and made a good president because he didn't want the fucking job in the first place.
Wasn't it just they needed the biggest badass they could find in the room just to hold on to office?
Yeah, pretty much. They needed somebody who's a general in the revolution that could pretty much scare everybody into compliance.
Hey, when he was a lieutenant, he started a war in Canada. Thanks for that, by the way.
It's what we do best, kind of.
Google French-Indian War. You'll learn that the Blades of Abraham is not a reference to the Israeli Air Force.
But it has been said of George Washington that that's why he was perfect for the job, because he didn't want it. This is a common trope. The person becomes leader despite the fact they never wanted power in the first place, and they still don't. So when you have the guy who can not only see the past, the present, and the future, and oh, by the way, Tyrion explained all of it before he made the announcement. So again, I don't know, were people not listening, or just not paying, or just waiting for more boobs to show up on screen? I don't know which it was. But Tyrion basically lays the argument out and then says, and that's why Bran should be it. And everyone just goes, he didn't do anything! Are we this eager to live under warlords? What the fuck is wrong with people? Anyone want to take that?
Yeah, I was kind of hoping Sam, when they cut him off, sorry, Alexa, he would just say, yo, you guys don't like my system, but look where our current system has gotten us.
I have to admit, I do, because there was a lot of people who were saying, oh, they should establish a democracy. And when we got to see the Iron Throne melt, I felt a lot of people thought that's where they were going. But I do love that they shot that down pretty quickly. I love the line, maybe I should let my horse vote. I'm sorry, that line just kind of killed me.
Hey, the Dothraki would probably be okay with that.
We had a horse as a Roman senator once upon a time in history. Why not?
Let's not discuss that part of history. Need I remind you of that line from the Pinky and the Brain song?
Listen,
they sainted a greyhound.
Listen, horses are people too. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Well, hey, listen, in this world, you might want to identify as a horse. I actually just saw a video on Facebook where there was a pony person, pony girl, pony boy. There was like some sort of competition amongst pony people. This is the world we live in, folks.
When you say pony people, are you saying that weird ass ending from Sorry to Bother You, or are you talking about bronies?
I'm talking about the pony person fetish.
Otherkin?
Yeah, something along those lines. Alexis, you want to weigh in on Bran here real quick and how people, had this ridiculous reaction to him?
You were right. There was no way that everyone was going to be happy with the ending. We had all built up theories and ideas of what was going to happen. I do wish that Game of Thrones had expanded for one more season. I feel like we really, really pushed too much into season 8. I felt there was a lot more that could have been expanded on and built up a little bit more. If nothing else, I thought it would have been interesting to see how King's Landing dealt with Daenerys as the queen, and then maybe the next season, Tyrion and Jon realizing we made a huge mistake and we need to rectify this.
Mm-hmm. Like I said,
but the truth is, I didn't know who was going to be king. I had to feel everyone kept saying Jon's going to be king because he's going to kill Daenerys, and then Arya's going to kill Drogon. And I just sat there going, yeah, and then Grey Worm's going to chop his head off. Do you really think the Unsullied and the Dothraki are going to allow that?
You know, in someone's fanfic, I'm sure Jon actually turns into John Wick and just slays the Unsullied with his bare hands, all of them.
Have you seen the John Wick memes for Game of Thrones?
All right. I think we've sufficiently covered this. Let me. In total, I enjoyed the series. It got me through a particularly rough period of my life. You know, as I was watching it, I said I was going through chemo at the time, and so it was a great escape. If you're one of these people who's so mad about the ending, and it defied your expectations in a negative way, you don't know being let down by a show or movie until you've been waiting for the third Matrix movie, only to find out that none of your theories were right, and it was the world's stupidest explanation.
It was the Wing Commander movie for me. Oh, jeez. So much anticipation, so much disappointment.
Yeah.
Mine was the series finale of Dexter. Yeesh.
Yeah. So we've all had it. There have been some truly terrible endings for movie franchises and television shows. Game of Thrones was fine. It was by far the least stupidest thing I've seen in a long time.
It's okay to disagree. It's okay to not like some things that you used to like, but just maybe chill a bit, guys. Like it's a TV show. Like it's okay.
How many signatures does that protest the petition have now that says they want season 8 to be rewritten and refilmed? It had over 1 million last time I checked.
If you're at the point of crowdsourcing and crowdfunding, maybe you are taking this a bit too far.
I honestly wish everybody that signed that petition, their information gets sold to somebody else and they get nothing but robocalls for the rest of their life.
That's probably going to happen anyway.
Probably. All right. I think we've sufficiently beaten this horse. There you are. I haven't played my horse sound in a while, and that's the third time I've played it in as many as 3 days. That being said, tomorrow, we had a schedule change tonight. We were supposed to do Long Road to Ruin John Wick, but Sean had a thing, so we did this instead. We'll do John Wick tomorrow, and then a week from tonight, myself, Robert Winfrey, and Pat Mullen, The Last Word and Mr. Toxic Masculinity, as I'm calling them, we'll be reviewing the Zac Efron Ted Bundy movie, Extremely Wicked, Shockingly Evil, and Vile, which I watched with my wife. It's one of the few things we watched together, and it was glorious. In addition to which, we will be reviewing AEW Double or Nothing on Sunday night, and then Jesse will bring you the source material Blood Ties episode on Memorial Day. I'll be reviewing, myself, Alexis, and Robert will be reviewing Aladdin on Tuesday. The Metal Hammer of Doom will be reviewing The Sworn Enemy. And then on June 1st, the day before my birthday, I'll be 43 years young. Myself, Pat Mullen, and Robert Winfrey will be doing alternate commentary for Anthony Joshua, the true world champion heavyweight boxer, versus Andrew Ruiz Jr., some dude that they decided to replace the other guy with. So that'll be fun. Alexis, sell some stuff.
I'd like to sell some stuff. I need to pay my bills. Honeysuckle Rose Creations, the intersection of geek and chic, handmade jewelry upcycled from game pieces. We currently have a big sale going on to the end of the month, and I just realized we're kind of coming up on the end of the month, so time is running out. 15% off everything in both our Etsy and Handmade at Amazon stores. That's all of our necklaces, our barrettes, our hairpins, our cufflinks. I was going to say something else, but my brain just kind of stopped working there for a second. But yes, everything in both stores.
Happens to me all the time.
Blame it on the weather. I'd like to remind you guys, live in Missouri.
Wait. Did you say you were going to blame it on the rain?
The neighboring town got taken out with the tornado. I'm blaming it on the twisters.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. Seriously, shout out to all of my friends and colleagues in the Jefferson City area who had to deal with that ordeal last night. I hope that you guys were okay. I hope that cleanup is underway, and I hope you all have really good insurance. But seriously, though, again, 15% off everything in both stores. That's Honeysuckle Rose Creations. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
All right, David, tell us where we can learn Kung Fu.
I think that's in like the loading program to the Matrix.
I think that was the joke.
Yeah. Yeah, I got nothing again this time, guys.
No plugs? No nothing?
No, I've just been getting through life. You know, not much projects to talk about yet.
Okay, fair enough. All right, folks, we hope you've enjoyed our discussion. To those of you who've been waiting for this and waiting, I hope you were satisfied that we did not ruin your expectations. I hope you enjoyed our conversation. Did you enjoy the conversation, Alexis? Did you have a good fun time tonight?
I did. You know what? People can complain all they want about the final few episodes. This was still overall a great season. If it's a numbers game, it was great overall. We got at least 7 terrific seasons. We got some amazing actors who, frankly, I don't think any of us would have really known about, who are now being pushed into the limelight. I mean, I'm going to go ahead and admit it. The only thing I knew Peter Dinklage from was that bit in Elf when he takes down Will Ferrell.
He's also in Days of Future Past.
Yeah, but that's actually one of my favorite movies. But I believe that came out after like a couple of seasons of Game of Thrones.
I believe you are correct.
Yeah, so if nothing else, we got great characters. We got some amazing actors who we're now going to see in future projects. There's a push for Kit Harington to take over as Wolverine, and I would be fine with that. Yeah,
that'd be fine. He seems a bit soft voice for that sort of thing, but he's also a good actor. So what the hell? I'll say what the heck. David, did you have fun tonight? Oh, of course, always. The fact that I rushed you a week early to do this, you okay? Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't have done it elsewise, but I've had a lot of thoughts about Game of Thrones over the past few seasons, so it was nice to finally get all those out somewhere. Yes, this was. I really hope we didn't ruin season 8 for you, man. Oh no, the internet beat you to it. That's if someday someone's going to open up like a time box and someone's got to have like that written on a piece of paper. The internet already ruined it. And that summed up the years 2000 through 2020. I'm being really hopeful that this ends, that sort of thing ends soon. All right, speaking of ending soon, be well, be safe, and behave.
Ryobi Days at the Home Depot. Buy a Ryobi One Plus 2-pack battery starter kit for just $99 and get one of over 20 select Ryobi One Plus tools up to an $84 value free. The One Plus system also fits over 125 other Ryobi tools. So now going cordless is almost endless. Buy the battery kit, get a free tool. Ryobi Days now at the Home Depot. More saving, more doing. Valid through June 19th. Limit 1 per customer while supplies last. See store for details.
Hi, I'm Jay Farner, CEO of Quicken Loans. 30% of Americans who are planning home improvements of $5,000 or more will pay for those renovations with a high-interest credit card. That may not be a great idea. A better idea may be to take cash out of your home with a Quicken Loans 30-year fixed-rate mortgage. The rate today on our 30-year fixed-rate mortgage is 4.375%. APR 4.65%. Call us today at 800-QUICKEN or go to rocketmortgage.com.
Rates subject to change. Pay 2.13% fee to receive this discounted rate. Call for cost information and conditions. Equal housing lender. License in all 50 states. NMLS number 30.